mast on the roof that the council aren't happy about is still, I think, if you've done the calculations right, putting less power out than a mobile phone put straight into the side of your head.
And all I do is simply drill 2 holes and put the eye bolts through for the mast and screw it to the mast. Instant outside access point. Okay. Over to Peter.
Woo! Thank you. Right. Now just going to look at my other stand. The presentation is entitled Digital Bricklaying, apparently. First of all, who or what is Wireless Wales? Because we have got some people here who haven't been involved. Primarily a hobbyist organisation for people interested in building community wireless networks, commands, whatever you want to call them. Online meeting of minds, sounds about right, I think, from last year, how we're going. We did start due to the frustrations with the lack of broadband. If you think back to 14 months ago, what was that, December 2002, I think most of us were on 56k. I was one of the few to have been on broadband at the time, even if it was only 64k. And you'll know about my post saying that 64k is broadband, because I do have a very strong view, that broadband should not be defined as 512k just because that's what BT sell as the default speed. And I won the longest post award on ISP review last year for saying that, which I was quite pleased with actually. As it says, we held our inaugural meeting in Merthyr last January, and most of us associate via the forums. Membership is open and currently free, because I read back in the minutes for the last meeting and we did actually say at some point we might have a membership fee. At the current state I don't see why we need one. That is our mission statement, which I'm sure all of you have read. Well, I hope all of you have read. Encourage and assist the building of community-owned broadband wireless network infrastructure, etc., etc. The way we'll do it is to construct small networks and make big ones by linking them together. Operate a free of charge intranet. The main point in that is, rather than trying to be an ISP, which we're not, if we keep everything free, then the members will do what they want with it. If you get to the point where 2 people want to get broadband and one of them's got it and the other hasn't, and they can get a wireless connection, they can put a secure VPN in place, virtual private network, and run whatever they want to across that. Scope to integrate public internet at some point in the future, so we're not totally ruling out having internet access over the network. And also creating an umbrella organisation for ADSL campaigns in Wales, because we are still a black spot. I don't know if any of you have seen the latest map I threw off. It's gone a bit greener recently, and there's quite a lot of blue, but if you look, it's all around the edges, everything in the middle is still black or red. So we are a umbrella ADSL campaign as well, but it's not our primary function. As we go, here's what we're not. We aren't supported by any funding at all at the moment, but we're open to offers. We're not an ISP. As Rob said there, build a big enough wireless LAN and the internet will come to us. Fingers crossed. We're not a charity. The main reason for that is because it costs too much to be a charity, and you've got to go through stupid amounts of paperwork and have trustees and horrible. We're not a business either, but we are open to the concept of being a not-for-profit company with no shareholders, and we're certainly not another Me Too group. Requirements for the proposed network. It must be scalable. Now what that means is you can't think about, I think the best example is single channel meshing, which will work on a very small scale. possibly around a couple of houses, and that's what the locust world boxes do. Some of you would have seen. We've looked a lot into it, and they are not scalable for the sort of size network we're talking about building. End user access, we're looking to basically have 11 meg wireless, which gives you about 5-6 meg throughput. The plan then is to make the backbone links faster, so that you won't clog up your backbone links just by putting local traffic on them. Off-the-shelf kit which uses considerably less power, as I'm sure you're all aware of a mobile phone handset. The mast on the roof that the council aren't happy about is still, I think, if I've done the calculations right, putting less power out than the mobile phone, but straight into the side of your head. I think I'm right with that, am I? Well, I don't know exactly, so I will elaborate on that.
About 50 watt.
I'll edit that out.
I'm sure we haven't got 100 watt amplifier.
I'm sure too.
Yeah.
Because I know my wife wouldn't let me spend that much money.
Yeah, they're a little bit expensive. And totally illegal anyway. Must be upgradable and compatible to public internet in the future. Self-healing and low maintenance. That's talking about things like OSPF routing, which if Big Rug was here, he'd talk about, because there was no anything much about it, do we? You do. Oh, alright, you can talk about it later then. I know it just sort of works, and sort of finds the shortest route or the quickest route on its own.
You need to know anything else?
Probably not today, no. Needs to be owned, operated and maintained by the community, for the community, so no business interests, well, yeah, no fully commercial interests in it, it's a community thing. And now I'm going to hand over to Doug, who's going to carry on the presentation. Hopefully.
Thanks guys. Cheers. Okay, on to the technical bits. Pete mentioned something called OSPF that we can talk about, and I'm sure people that have been at Alcatel and stuff have had that pounded into them. Things like you'll see on Big Bloke's pictures, when he's always talking about OSPF, BGP, routing as opposed to bridging, and all these sorts of things. Okay. And what hopefully we can do today is actually explain the reason why we keep harping about building a network needs to be routers, not just standalone access points or little locust world mesh boxes or D-Link off the shelf or XYZ. Okay, and the reasoning why to build a network you need to have just a little bit more than just a simple access point. So, forgive me if I don't, if I talk about a slide that I haven't shown or whatever. As I said, I don't know the presentation fully because I only sort of seen it completed this morning as he's not coming. Okay. So what equipment can we use? Is anyone running a Staros box currently? Yeah. You are?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. What do you think of the interface?
I think it's loads of features.
Yeah.
But its documentation is pretty poor, which is a shame because there's obviously a great deal of power under the hood, as it were. But to actually find out all about it, you actually need to go through the forum, and there's a hell of a lot there. It's lurking.
The Staros forum.
Yeah.
It does tend to.
They have put a wiki board up in the last week or so.
Oh, have they?
Which is hopefully going to become the manual.
Right.
Or it will be, hopefully, people will put things onto the wiki board,
Okay.
and then that will metamorphosize into the manual or something.
People, the more you can do, I find, the more it scares people away. Like this with Staros. It can do so much, so you look at it and just go, "Gah," like that, and you don't do anything.
Where do I start?
Where do I start? Well, you start with the simple equipment. So we've all seen the Wemo. This is what Rob Big Bloke has on his house. We have that antenna there. We just so that's external enclosures. I'll show you. This is an antenna from Wemo. Good one. And this is a 12 dBi Omni, and we'll explain what the difference is between DVD, DBN and DBI and things like that. And we'll try to dispel some of the myths. So I don't know if anyone wants to have a look. I haven't tested this one yet. This was going on the roof again. But be careful with it.
Also owned by Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes. Okay. So, low spec personal computers. One of the advantages of using programs like Staros and any of the little distros is they don't need huge amounts of hard disks. They don't use huge amounts of memory or anything like that. So you can build your distributions. Pete, you'll have to remind me how big Staros needs hard disk wise.
16 meg flash card will run on.
16 meg.
16 meg flash card.
Okay, so
any size hard drive per that.
So this is a bit of overkill then. But this is a compact flash card, and this is a compact flash to IDE converter. Okay. And
Did you get that from PC Engine by any chance?
no,
Oh.
they're dirt cheap from all over the place. I think I got this one from Lin ITX.
I got some off eBay, and you have a loan to them on that.
Yeah. And this actual compact flash has something called IPCOP running on it, which is a firewall software. Fantastic piece of kit. So have a look at that.
That's an idea though, is if that would run like that. I'll bring a couple of other old boxes back online.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, there's the mini
Not
ICX, nano ICX and stuff. We do put something like, not put them down, but say about suggestion of using them. But I think these are fantastic. Yeah, you can get them probably cheaper than you can from Macklin, but I just put down that because it's down the road. And external, waterproof, and all I do is simply drill 2 holes and put the eye bolts through for the mast and screw it to the mast. Instant outside access point. Okay, so off-the-shelf equipment. Now, what's the difference between that? Well, A, you're limited to what it can offer, but companies like D-Link and Linksys are always advancing their firmware and software. I mean, from the first D-Link access I bought, the same model, now with upgraded firmware, has a huge more amount of features. Okay, so the manufacturers are supporting them. The disadvantage is the fact that they don't have any routing. They act almost as a bridge, and what this basically means is anything that comes in is just passed straight down. Okay, so for a small few users on what we describe as a hotspot connectivity, that's not a problem. Okay, it's very simple, and you can use these. We can use these within our network as we do. Yeah, as long as you at some point provide routing back into the actual core of the network. Okay, so these are what we describe as they are called access points. We can describe these as our access devices then into our network. Okay. Lots of text. I'm not going to stand and read off the screen, so you can read that.
We're all reading.
So, you can see that it starts to talk about things that do not support OSPF and BGP. Okay? You don't need to have these protocols to build a network. Okay? And the easiest way to describe this is if you have one person that wants to talk to the person next to them. Well, you simply talk to the person next to them. But how can you talk to the person the other side? Yeah, if he's in your way. So you have to pass the information to him. But the problem is that somebody else is also passing information to him, so you have to wait. Yeah, and that's one of the problems with simple networks and simple bridges, that you have to wait. So what you do is you have another layer back. So while this person is taking information from another point, I can pass it to here and you can pass it to there. So you can imagine now, as your network gets bigger, you're sending information into this network and you want it to come out in a position. Call it X1. Now, you could find that you actually go all the way down here to come all the way back, which is logical. The deeper you go into your switch matrix, your core network, you're going to get to your end point. But it can be very slow because you just keep bumped, if you like. This is where things like OSPF come in, open shortest path first, is you lose a little bit of your traffic because you have more information going on the network as in signal. But the benefit of that is that they all know where they all are. So each node has the address of every other node. Yeah?
Short route.
Now they all have intelligence and they all know about each other. Any data going through the network can actually pass through the shortest path. So it will actually determine the path through, pin it down and transmit the data, as opposed to just being bumped all round until you eventually come out somewhere. Any more than that about OSPF is when we actually have a network up and running, and this is the best way to do it. Let's build a network. Let's build it. Once we know it's working, then let's work an OSPF. Yeah, because you have to go in and manually type some parameters in. But until then, don't worry about it. It's not needed. Don't think you have to route. You have to have it. Okay, and we'll talk about BGP in a bit more detail in a minute. So, we've already sort of discussed about bridging versus routing. I think the idea of always getting over there isn't missed on anyone, is it? No? It's basically saying everything from there is just bunged over everything from there. The idea of a router is it knows where other things are and it can actually point them in the right direction. The easiest way, because a lot of people find it hard to jump the concept between wires and wireless. Yeah, as soon as you say wireless, it's all of a sudden different somehow, and it really isn't from a cable router. Okay, and the best way to describe it is think of a switch. Okay, we've all used switches and hubs and everything in the house. We've all got DSL routers, the ones that are luckiest to have them. And I've left it in the car, but never mind. You all know what one looks like. Okay, so what happens if we have a hub? And we connect one computer into one port and one computer into another port and another computer to another port. So we have three computers. And computer A wants to talk to computer B. What happens? Anyone?
The information gets sent to all computers in the hub.
Yeah. Okay. So computer A says, I want to talk to computer B. But computer C and computer B both receive the information. Because a hub can only do one thing, and that's broadcast the information. So everything that comes in on the port just gets broadcast across the whole network. Okay? And the computer that knows that information, that it's for that computer, by using its MAC address, actually says, oh yeah, that's for me, and accepts the information. What happens the next time? So the second, you send some information, you stop, and you want to send some information again. Anyone?
Goes out everywhere again.
Goes out everywhere again, because it's a simple broadcast domain. It's called broadcasting. Yeah? It doesn't do anything else except broadcast. Now, if you have a switch, what does it do?
When you send us the information to the machine you want to.
How does it do that?
Well, write the table within its own memory of the IP address if you've got connected.
Okay.
And then it goes direct on IP address.
There you go. That's it. So the difference between a switch is the initial broadcast. Once it knows the point of between A and C, it pins that down and it now has a route. When it wants to send that information again, it goes the same route. Okay? So now, computer exploited or whatever, the one that's not receiving, doesn't receive the information. How about if you stop for about 10 minutes and then do it again?
It's still active. The switch itself has always got the memory.
The MAC addresses from the table need to our ARP will start again to do
Yeah.
requests and get MAC address.
Yeah.
Start the,
Pins out.
is it?
Yeah. The tables are dynamic, okay, and they have time delay. To do that, you need a more expensive switch. You need one generally, it's called the managed switch.
Or you
Okay.
can static MAC address.
Or you- yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So a managed switch, you can go in and you can manually do a routing table.
Well, I can do that, Mark.
You can.
I can, yeah.
There you go.
It's not a routing table because
No.
it's just a little bit.
Yeah. What he's saying is correct. It's not. It's a routing table. It's a static routing. You can't route. It's just basically a simple table between.
Information where stuff's meant to go, right.
And you're not really routing stuff. The difference then with the router, yeah, is
Next layer.
it's
It's the next layer.
It's the next
which is
layer.
involving
I'm not going to go
IP
into
addresses.
layers, but it's involving IP addresses now, and we can route on different information. Okay, and that's more intelligent. Okay, and a way to work that is if you unplugged it and stuck it in a different port, it would find out where it was. Okay. Right. That's that bit. Infrastructure mode and ad hoc mode. You're all aware of these different functionalities. Laptop, I have a card in here, and I can not double click on it. It is. Okay, so go to configuration, I can select ad hoc or infrastructure mode. What this basically means in infrastructure mode, it is listening out for a beacon from an access point that's saying, hello, I am SSID wirelesswales.net, I'm on this channel, X, Y, and Z, you need these parameters, oh, and I'm running web. Yeah? So, in infrastructure mode, in site survey, you will actually see the information, or not, as it just disappeared. So you can see in the lower boxes, these are some of the ones I've connected to before. In here you will see signal strength. Oh, there it is. Okay, you will see the SSID if it's being transmitted, the name, the MAC address, it's an access point, the channel it's on if we scroll across and la 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 la. Okay? Ad hoc mode allows computers to connect, client cards to connect from one to the other. Okay, it's a very poor way of connecting PC to PC. So we have ad hoc mode and infrastructure mode. Wireless Wales node concept. Okay, what this is the software called Staros can use normal client cards in different routes, different formats. So you can have them as access points, you can have them as infrastructure, WDS mode, wireless distribution system, or you can have them as client mode. You can set them as anything you want, any of the ways that can be done. Okay. The idea being is that in our implementation is we have at least 3 cards in the Staros box. Okay, one distributing one way, one distributing another way, and one for client users as in an access point. Okay, does that make sense for everyone? On top of that then, oh there you go, that's it. Nice omni antenna, one to the one way, one to the other, using coaxial cable. I suppose you're all wondering why everyone's harping about different coax or not, I don't know. Yeah, they're different. Yeah. Do you often hear a big bloke screaming about the size of his coax? He's going to love this when he sees the video. This is something called LMR 400, okay, which, as far as cable in this dimension and this value for money is probably the best you're going to get. After this, you go into a lot more expensive stuff. If you've ever used it or whatever. You can see the difference there in the actual core of the coax is solid. It's just 100% better than everything else you get. Okay.
What about the RG58, which I found on the internet?
Somebody just swore. This is, I think this is not RG58, but it feels like it. This is probably, it might be 100. The impedance that we use is 50 ohm, not 75 ohm. Yeah. That any of the ISPs might want to think they can use, and we'll talk about what happens when you use the wrong impedance coax. You asked the question about what about RJ58. You can use RJ58 if you really want to, but the likelihood is if you use longer in a meter, by the time your signal gets to the antenna, there won't be anything left of it. Okay. The reason that it's so poor is we're talking at frequencies above 2 gigahertz. Okay, as we all know, it's 2.4. Yeah, and anything above a gig is very easy A to lose, and B doesn't have very good characteristics, if you like, for going along a flexible cable. Okay, you may have seen when you were working before waveguides. Yeah, has anyone been of a waveguide?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So a waveguide is basically when you see microwaves on cell phone masts. Yeah, that is called a waveguide on the base of that, and generally they're hollow tubes. And the idea of these hollow tubes is to keep the microwave signals inside the hollow tube. Okay, microwaves. You know, if you bend a coax, if I connected in there and in there signal, and I did that, yeah, I would have probably a good 2 decibels of my signal spitting out the corner. Yeah? It's very poor. The shielding on it is extremely poor. Okay. If you look at the coax, it's a shame because I'm sure Rob would have actually brought some with him, and it's boys, you know, it's men's coax as it goes. Yeah. You have in the industry for cellular, we have something called LDF 450, 550, and 1250. Now, when you're using 200-foot masts and you use an LDF 1250, you use the weight of the antenna to curve the coax because the coax is about this thick. And it's literally a solid. It's like a huge copper pipe going up in the centre. It's still got polystyrene inside, and but it's literally a pipe, and you can't bend the stuff. So we put the huge connector on top. We put the antenna on, and just sort of use the weight of the antenna to bend the curve the coax. That's proper coax. Yeah. And it's important over long runs. And one of the advantages of using external enclosures for your equipment is the fact that you have a very, very short coax. Okay? This, as you can tell, the reason I have it here, instead of being used anyways, because this is an RJ58 one and it's pants. Yeah? That is probably 3 decibels lost. That's how bad it is.
Already.
Yeah. Just in that length there. By the time you take your connector and the cable into account, you probably, I mean, I'm probably, you know, maybe about 2, but to make it sound realistic, it's probably, I would say 3 dB, which I was looking at your figures. That's nasty. You know, we're talking 35 milliwatt, 50 milliwatt if you're lucky up an access point, and you've already lost half of it before you even got into the rest of your coax. Yeah? This is one of my pigtail in my box upstairs. It's about that long, and it's NMR 100, which is a decent version of this size of cable. Okay? And even that still, I would say, is about 80 long. Okay? So, where he's putting these coax pictures in there, he's saying use decent coax. It's like building a huge engine for your car and sticking a go-ped exhaust on the back. You just wouldn't do it, would you? Okay? So don't fall over when you get to the stage of coax. Yeah. Okay, we've sort of done this to death really about one channel routing. The idea of these slides is is to depict the differences between one channel connection. That's okay, point-to-point link. If you have a no network at all, you just route from one point to another, that's fine. And then you can use two connections. But as it says there, neither node 2 or user A or user B may transmit more data on channel X while this happened. Okay, while this is happening, your throughput is dropping by 50%. Okay, and this is the definition of some of the commercial antenna access points that offer repeating. You've seen that? Yeah, they offer repeating. So what this happens is, how this happens is I'm the access point. There's a repeater and then another person connected. Okay? There is only one set of radio gear in there. Okay? So while that is receiving, it can't be transmitting. Okay? So your throughput is down by 50%. Thus it has to wait, finish what it's doing, then do the next bit. Okay? Even more so. You can tell he's passionate about that, can't you? Rob, you are obviously passionate about this bit, aren't you? Okay, so we've seen this on the forum, I'm sure you have. If you haven't, where have you been? Internode traffic through. Now, inside the router hardware, as in our preferred choice, as it seems, Staros, is the intelligence bit, and this can decide whether it needs to go out channel 1 or channel 12. Okay, so your client access is on channel 6, and you have your route in between. And as you can see, if we daisy chain them together, we have a network. We have a core, we have a backbone, and we have a user access. Simple, isn't it? And that's the logical view of the hardware. I'm not going to yak on about pretty pictures. What he's describing here is some of the nodes becoming backbone only. Depending on how the network increases, you may have to put redundancy between towns and villages, or between, you need to go round corners or over mountains or whatever. Alright? And obviously the more paths you have, the more dynamic your network can be. Okay? You're going to have less congestion. Coping with the valleys. I don't know his train of thought there, so I'll leave that. Okay? Sorry. Right. Something that people don't realise at 2.4. What was Wi-Fi, wireless fidelity, designed for? Was it designed for what we want to do with it? No. What was it designed for?
Laptops running around an office.
Yeah? Okay. So, originally 2.4 was designed for inter-office, small office, home, user. And as you can see by this picture, all on the kit we have, you have a channel selection between 1 and up to 14 depending on where you are. But in reality, you only have 1, 6 and 11. All of the other channels are what's called overlapping. So what does that mean? Anyone? Yeah, we call it in the trade co-channel interference. Okay? If you're using channel 1 and 6, forget any other technologies that you're using on the communication between the two. You're completely away from each other. Okay? And the further you come away, if you're using channel 1 and 11, there's pretty no chance that this channel is going to interfere with this channel. But if you're using 1 and 2, well, you've got to rely on other technology because of this area here, okay, is all being transmitted in the same frequency. So you've got to rely on other methods to differentiate between the signal that you're transmitting and the signal you're trying to receive. Okay? So in reality, you can only use channel 1, 6, and 11. Okay? If you have to use other channels, then you try to do other things. So what would be a way of, if you had to use, say, channel 1 and 4, what would you do? How do you think you could help to stop the interference?
Change the polarisation.
Exactly. Yeah, change the polarisation. So we could use, for, say you had to do this on a access point, 3 cards in the box, and you're using 1, 6 and 11. Okay, and then the next box is using 1, 6 and 11. Where would you put, what would you try and do with the 1? Okay. So we've got two areas. Yeah. This area, I brought a whiteboard here a couple of months ago and somebody's nicked it. We've got 2 areas, yeah, and we have channel 1, 6 and 11. So we're using between these two, channel 6, yeah? So communicate from this area to this area, we're using channel 6. Okay? So from this connection to this connection, we're using what? Channel 1. Okay? For users, as in mobile users, yeah, what channel are we using? 11. Okay. What channel would you want to use for users on this channel?
1.
1. Why?
It's the way as far away as possible from the other two ones.
This is used in everything from your mobile phone to all sorts of networks. It's called a signal reuse path.
See, big blurb shows that on the slide, doesn't it, the previous one? In fact,
That one?
yeah, well, both of them.
Yeah. So you can see there he's reusing the channels. Okay. Thank you.
Using 12 instead of 11. But,
What did I say
that
there?
works. No, well,
Oh yeah, he's using
12's out the way of
yeah.
even better.
people hacking your backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, you can use 12.
Probably just about get away with 14 otherwise there.
Yeah. Well, if you put a jack firmware into your cards, but hey. So
Military like you though.
yeah.
There'll be a bit of big pliers.
Yeah. If not it's from the local community council. We love you. So you want to split them then. If you have to use signals that are close together, as in the overlapping ones, the best way you can do is use different polarization. And the easy way to do this is use it when you're using Yagi antennas directionally. You can just change them from horizontal to vertical. Okay. There is a benefit in using one kind of polarization for longer links, which is
Circular.
it? Okay.
Or horizontal.
Horizontal? Yeah, that was more the answer.
Ah.
Yeah, horizontal is better designed for longer range links. Okay, and ask me later if you want to know
But
what.
circular makes more sense.
Yes.
But everyone says
What
horizontal
circular
works better.
polarization is? Circular polarization is very good for reflected signals. Reason being is every time a signal gets reflected, so if you're transmitting vertical, okay, and you get a reflection, what happens to the signal? It changes. Every single time you get a reflection, it changes polarization. If you have a circularly polarized antenna, and an antenna that is both vertical and horizontal at the same time, which they call circular then, this is very good for picking up multi-fragmented signals, and will increase your gain by about 2.5 to 3 dB. Okay?
And you have 2 circular polarizations, clockwise and anti-clockwise, that
Yes.
equate to vertical and horizontal.
Yes. Thank you.
It's the satellite engineering bit coming in.
Yes. Ian is a TV engineer, satellite engineer. What do you call yourself now?
Technical writer now.
Yeah. No construction. Yeah, he's saying use cheap hardware. It's great. Proper coaxial cables and connectors aren't so cheap. Buy from radio routers. Yeah, that's all I can say to that. Yeah, I would die to get hold of some big fat coax, but it's a nightmare to work with, as you've seen, and tends to knock cameras off walls when coax pulls out. Yeah. So we were down at Anglo's, and my camera was sat on the floor, nice and safe. I thought just put it here. Now there's some little slabs going to lay down. It's nice and safe for there. nothing can touch it. All of a sudden, crash! What the hell's that? And the coax pulled out of the antenna connector and just came swinging down and just went whoosh! And just took out my camera and stood on the floor. So it was like no! When coax goes into the video. Note, shove the AP up the pole. I must admit, I'm a fan of this. Rob isn't. Okay. What you got to sort of remember is the difference between our planned membership of Wireless Wales and anybody that just wants to join Wireless Wales as a router. We were using and we are using off-the-shelf commercial access points as pure hotspot access. Our connection down to Pig Anglo will be StarOS to link into our network as in proper routing. But we are running off the shelf, and if you do want to run just a simple access point, as far as I'm concerned, it's something called Power over Ethernet, PoE, and your AP in a box at the pole with less than a meter coax is probably the simplest and easiest way to go. I don't think anyone can deny that. You can get the D-Link 900 now for 63 quid plus the VAT. You can get small omni antennas, sector antennas for less than £100. PoE unit, build it yourself or buy the commercial one, run the Ethernet app and you're done. It's great. That's only my personal choice. Okay. As he says, you still need a router. Okay. If you want to route using off-the-shelf APs, there's no reason why you couldn't use StarOS with 2 client cards, and instead of 1 card for an access point, you could just have it off there on Ethernet to an AP. Yeah? Because at the end of the day, the StarOS uses wireless cards to route. But if you took all of the wireless cards out and put Ethernet cards in, it would do the same thing on the Ethernet cards, because it's fundamentally a router. You don't have to have 1 NIC card in there, you can have 2 or 3. So if you had 2 wireless cards and then 2 NIC cards, 1 NIC card going into your switch and the other NIC card going to an AP, that would also work. Okay? Remember that an access point is nothing more than an air interface onto a cable. Yeah? I don't like calling it a bridge. Okay, but that's all it's effectively doing. The difference between a little bridge that you buy and an access point is an access point has software to allow DHCP, authentication, and other things. And when you just buy a bridge, it literally is a pure wireless to LAN. No management software, no DHCP, no nothing. What?
The original access points were pure bridges.
Yeah. With no management software, no nothing, no interface or anything like that. But at the end of the day, an access point, forget all of the software, just takes stuff out of the air and puts it onto an Ethernet cable. Okay? Against using little rat boards, not all of them have a lot of PCI slots on them. Okay? So, and as we know, for our flexibility, we need at least 3 PCI slots for our wireless cards. Okay, so there's a dilemma there. You can use, very similar to these, you can use converters to PCMI slots. Okay, so you could use the IDE controller to have a wireless card. And in fact, some of the new Nano ITX boards are coming out and they have 3, at least 2 PCMI
Mini
slots.
PCI slots.
Yeah, so that you can do that way as well. So there is ways around it, but effectively it's not brilliant.
If you rip apart the D-Link 5 gig cards, the tri-band cards, you take the cover off, and inside you've actually got the mini PCI card in another socket on the PCI board. You can take that out and throw it in your rack board.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper than importing the mini PCI boards from America.
Yeah, well, funny enough, these cards The D-Link version of these cards is if you take the metal, or all the Netgear ones, you take the metal shrouding off and the mini PCI.
This here isn't.
No?
No, the one in there.
I'm sure the one I've got. Anyway, the D-Link
Possibly
ones
not.
are. For sure. The D-Link ones are. Have we bored yet?
There's not much left from
Okay, buying hardware antennas, and we'll talk about the difference between commercial and homebrew in a second. You've seen the Omni, you've seen the little Yagis, they're very good for putting things up so that you don't get the like of some of the people in this village screaming that they're getting death rays at them. You don't get them in the village shop explaining to people that it is killing them and giving them cancer. Okay? There is nothing wrong with working near Wi-Fi. Okay? The power output is so minuscule, even if there was any harm on people. You know, if there was any proof that it could do you, I mean, flipping out, you know, there's nothing. The time you stand at the bottom of these things, the power is minuscule. Okay? Needless to say, the danger of using microwave. Okay? Microwave energy can burn at less than 30 milliwatts. Okay? Don't be fooled by us lot saying there's no danger. Because there is no danger as far as users in their homes are concerned. But for you guys playing with this stuff, there is a big danger. Okay? You're using high gain or larger output, 50 milliwatts, or if somebody's managed to get 100 milliwatts equipment, you will burn yourself if you're not careful. Okay? We had a day of signal testing on top of the church, and you'll remember this, and the earth fell off, the coax, bad using Maplin electronics, N-types are crap. Okay? And the coax fell off, and Mr. Melvin was leaning over, a very good friend of mine, leaning over, tightening up the nut on the Yagi, and he got a full belt of 50 milliwatts RF into his arm from the earth strap, the copper earth strap, and he had a burn mark all the way down there. Okay? It's not good. Okay? Microwave. If you stood in front of a 20 dBi antenna and you were sticking 100 milliwatts into that antenna and you stuck your face in front of that antenna, there's a good chance that you'd do yourself damage. Okay? We all joke about it, but think of yourself playing with mains. Okay? It's bloody dangerous. Alright?
Health and safety advice over.
Omnidirectional radiating from all directions at once. I think you've put in something about
Yeah, that comes
donuts,
later.
haven't you? It comes later, okay? How later?
After that.
Like that, after that. Okay, Omnis, you always draw us a circle with a dot in the middle. You'll see in a bit the donut effect. Yagis tend to be directional. Why do they use Yagi antennas for TV?
The game of funding with the receiver.
Yeah?
It's to narrow the beam so that you can be selective in what you receive and to reduce co-channel
Ghosting.
and ghosting.
Exactly. Yeah? You use directional antennas to reduce interference with other signals. Okay? Lots of different TVs, lots of different channels, lots of different polarizations. You only want to pick up one. And then because of the power and the spread of them, they're reflecting off from everywhere. Okay? So using an omnidirectional is a good idea for all-round coverage, but sometimes it's not a good idea because you effectively, you're transmitting in a bigger area, but you're also making yourself vulnerable to a lot more noise because you can pick up from a bigger area. Make sense? Okay, sectorized antennas. Generally, the difference here is they have built-in down tilt, so they can be high up. You see them on cellular antennas. You have mechanical down tilt and then something called electrical down tilt. They generally have a very reduced back lobe area, and this is obviously back to front ratio that you'll read when looking at specs. And they can they're set up at a very specific area, so you can have a 90 degree, 120 degree, which is the more often one you see. So you'll see 120 degree split into three, giving you a 360 degree coverage. Benefit of using the three sectorized antennas in a 120-degree pattern is that obviously at the bottom there you have 3 access point cards running to 3 different routers, giving you a lot more traffic capability. Okay, that's the benefit of using sectors on a commercial basis. Dishes, highly antennas, look like Sky dish. They're great. Only slight problem in using standard dishes is that you either have to re-bracket it to make your offset correct, or you have to mount them upside down. And again, you have the problem of your neighbours complaining you're sending rays into their garden. Okay, and that is the exact problem that Rob had with his neighbour. He had a dish up and it was pointing in the summer in the back garden, and the neighbours were like, and they put up with a lot really from the amount of masts that he has, but so you know, it was only fair he took it down. But again, you do have the problem of people's perception of what you're doing. Okay.
But it's now mounted up, or when he uses it, it's mounted up so down it looks as if it's beaming into space,
Yeah.
even though it's coming out horizontally.
Understanding the concept again of antennas, it's very similar to concept that people use to demonstrate loudspeakers in boxes and stuff. Represent an omni antenna. dBi, which everything is descripted at, I stands for isotropic. Okay. Am I wasting my time, or do you want me to go through this? Go through it, okay. Isotropic is basically a theoretical point in space. Okay? So if you think of a pinhead in the middle of a ball, and that is producing everything that you power into it out in a full 360 pattern. Okay? That is described as 0 dBi. Okay? As in everything that is coming into that point in space, so the cable going through it, is being retransmitted fully 360 degree out of it. And that is 0 dBi. Okay? And that's that. Everything is coming out there. So, perceived gain that we get with an isotropic radiator is the fact that now if we put a little hole in the box, oh, this one's a reflector, is it?
Mirror.
Okay, so if we put a little mirror behind this Omni now, we're reflecting all of the signal into a spot. Forget the fact that it's still going off this way and everything, but just pretend. Okay, so it's all going to the spot. Just as it said, the bulb appears brighter, but have we all of a sudden increased the wattage or the amount of power that we're putting into the bulb? We're not aware. Okay, but that light, think of your torch beam, is going to go how much further? A lot further, isn't it? Because we've now focused the energy into one spot, and that is what the I is in dBi. Now, that's good for some things. Okay. These are pizza slabs now, everybody. Okay, but they're very, very, very thoughtful. Okay. So this is what? If this was an antenna, and we're transmitting from this little point in the centre, what's the dBi of that? 0. Yeah? So this is what's called our isotropic radiator. So now we squash it. What's this? This is a donut of an Omni. So you think of the Omni coming up in the centre there, and we've now squashed the football, if you like. We've sat on the football and we've squished it down. And what we're doing now is we are now transmitting in 360 degrees, but on a more flatter plane. So we've increased the decibels, the gains, over isotropic in one direction. Okay? As in this direction. And we're reducing it, and you've always got a reduction. So where you've got a gain, you've got a loss. Okay? So we've reduced the loss up and down, and this is why the signal on this is dropping a little bit, because we're directly under an omnidirectional antenna. And that's where it looks. Okay? The more you drop that donut, squash that donut, the higher the gain you get. And this is why very high gain omnidirectionals are very good at transmitting 360 degree, but they're no good for a service to underneath them, because because very high gains, that large donut, that large hole in the centre is going to get bigger and bigger because not only you squash it down, you're squashing it up. Okay, the more you squash it, the further it goes out. Yeah? To overcome this, you have omnidirectionals, the more professional ones, the ones that generally have another £150 price tag, is they have something called an electrical down tilt. And you'll read this on some of them. They have a 3-degree down tilt. And what you'll see is a picture. This is a picture looking slightly that way. But when you look on it side on, you'll see the donut stretching out like that. But they also have another lobe transmitting down. Okay? But to do this involves more of the manufacturing process and obviously more bones. Okay? And that's what you'll see when you describe an omni, and you'll see the lobe, and that's an electronic down tilt. Okay? As opposed to just tilting the omni over. Okay? Yeah, that's what I just said. Hey, Wales! Wales!
Hey, if they haven't got Wilkinson, we're going to win.
Thanks, but nah. Okay? Right.
The rugby ball was in there for a point, man.
Was it? Go on then, what was your point?
It's the sort of 3D pattern of the gain on directional
Oh,
antenna.
that's good.